It was a regular day at the office, or at least I thought it would be. The usual hum of phone calls and the steady rhythm of keyboards clicking away filled the air as we worked through our respective tasks. My brother had recently been promoted to CEO of our family business, a position he had worked toward for years, and I had always supported him. Believing that this shift in leadership would only bring new opportunities for us both, I had worked hard alongside him for years, had built something together, a legacy that ran deeper than just a job. So when he called me into his office that afternoon, I thought we were going over some new developments, strategies, or plans for the future. There was no reason to suspect that anything was wrong, but when I sat across from him, the weight of the conversation felt different, as if something had shifted in the air. He looked at me, his face unreadable, and in a calm voice, one that didn't betray a hint of emotion, he said, "I'm letting you go." The words hit me like a punch, too. The gut I froze. For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what I had just heard. This wasn't a discussion about performance, nor was it about restructuring. It was about me, about my entire future, my place in the company, and our shared history. I had worked for this company, for him, for so long, and in that instant, everything we had built seemed to crumble before my eyes. There was no explanation, no discussion. Just those words, "I'm letting you go." The shock hit me like a wave, and for a long moment I just sat there, unable to speak. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. This was my brother, the person I trusted most. How could he do this? It was a regular day, or so I thought, until those words shattered everything. Our family business was more than just a company to me. It was the legacy we had built together, a part of who we were. From the very beginning, my brother and I had shared a vision, one that was deeply rooted in the values our father had instilled in us. He had always believed in us, in the bond we shared, and in the future we could create with the foundation he laid. It wasn't just about profits or growth. It was about building something that reflected our family's heart, our sweat, and our dreams. Growing up, we worked side by side. It wasn't just a job. We spent countless hours together, learning the ins and outs of the business, watching our father take pride in every success and feel the weight of every setback. My brother and I were a team, always ready to take on whatever challenge came our way, sharing not only the responsibility, but also the rewards. Our father had always said that the business would one day be ours, that we would carry the torch and take it to new heights. That belief in us, in our potential, was something I carried with me every single day. I never questioned that vision, never questioned that my brother and I would continue to share that legacy, side by side. But when our father passed away, everything began to change. It wasn't just the loss of a father, it was the loss of a guiding light, the person who had kept everything together. My brother stepped into the role of CEO, and with it, the weight of responsibility shifted onto his shoulders. At first, it felt like the natural course of things. He was ready, capable, and I was there, supporting him as always. But as time passed, I started to notice subtle shifts. The conversations we used to have about strategy and growth now felt distant, disconnected. The shared vision we had always had seemed to be slipping away. My brother began to make decisions that felt more like business moves than personal ones. And I, who had always been by his side, started to feel like an outsider. I never imagined that the bond we shared, the belief in our shared legacy, would ever come into question. But when he became CEO, something changed. What I thought was unbreakable began to fracture. I couldn't understand why. In the months leading up to my brother's promotion, I began to notice a change in him. At first, it was small, imperceptible almost, just little things. He'd walk into the office, and instead of greeting the team with that familiar smile, he'd get straight to the numbers. The conversation would quickly shift from strategy and vision to profits, expenses, and the next quarterly report. The warmth I once knew in our discussions was gone, replaced by something colder, more calculated. At first, I chalked it up to the stress of the upcoming transition. After all, becoming CEO was no small feat, and I understood the pressure he must have been under. But as the weeks went by, I began to notice more subtle shifts. The way he spoke to the staff, the decisions He started making everything seem to center around the bottom line. It was as if the people who had been with us from the start, the ones who had helped build this company, were now just numbers on a spreadsheet. He became more distant, more focused on results than relationships. It's a company, which had always been about family, now seemed to be turning into just another business for him to manage. He would brush off concerns with a quick "we'll handle it," or "it's not a priority right now." The trust I had always felt between us, the unspoken understanding of what mattered, of who mattered, was starting to slip away. I tried to push it aside, to convince myself that he was just adjusting to the new role. After all, leadership had its demands, and maybe he just needed to step into this new skin. But deep down, I could feel the distance growing between us. The brother I had worked beside for so many years, the one I trusted implicitly, was becoming someone else entirely, and when he became CEO, it became clear this wasn't just about new responsibilities or tough decisions. It wasn't just the weight of the job. Something fundamental had changed in him and in us, and that's when I started to wonder, had I truly known him at all? Sitting across from him in that office, I tried to steady myself, but the words that came out of his mouth hit me like a freight train. I could feel my heart racing as I tried to process the gravity of what he had just said. His gaze was unwavering, his posture stiff, but it was the coldness in his voice that struck me the hardest. "You're fired," he said, his words sharp and detached. The sentence echoed in my ears, but it didn't seem real. Couldn't be real. I was staring at my brother, the person I had spent years working beside, the one who had shared every victory and defeat with me. How could this be happening? How could he be telling me I was no longer part of the family business after everything we had been through together? "It's a business decision," he added, his tone emotionless, as though he were talking about something trivial. Like a change in supplier or a minor strategy shift, I felt a cold rush of shock and confusion. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. This wasn't just a job to me. This wasn't about a simple business transaction. This was family. We had built this business together. Everything I had done, every late night and early morning, had been for us. But now here I was, on the other side of the desk, watching him make a decision that would change everything. I had always believed that no matter what happened in the business world, we would always have each other's backs. That trust was the foundation of everything we had built. And yet in one moment, he had turned his back on me. I was stunned, speechless. My mind screamed that this couldn't be happening, but my heart knew the truth. This wasn't just about work. This was personal. He had just walked away from the very brother who had stood by him through everything, and it hurt, more than I could ever put into words. He wasn't just firing me from a job. He was severing a bond, breaking something that had felt unbreakable. And in that moment, everything I had believed, in everything we had built together, was shattered. I walked out of that office feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Oh, my legs were unsteady, as though the weight of what had just happened had somehow physically drained me. Every step I took toward the exit felt surreal, like I was walking through a fog, my surroundings blurring into a haze. I had poured my heart and soul into this company. It wasn't just a business to me, it was my life. I had built it, nurtured. It helped it grow from the ground up. Now, just like that, it was no longer mine. The feeling of loss was overwhelming. I had worked for so long, side by side with my brother, believing in the vision we had shared. Now everything felt meaningless. I stepped out of the building, my eyes lingering on the place that had once felt like home. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stranger's house, foreign, unwelcoming, and cold. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me back to reality, but I didn't want to face it. The screen flashed with calls from colleagues, family members, and even some friends. They had probably heard by now. They were probably checking in, offering their support, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. What could I say? Hey, I just got fired by my own brother. How could I explain to them that I was no longer part of their world? I put the phone on silent and left it in my pocket. I couldn't bring myself to engage with anyone. In that moment, I felt more alone than I ever had before. The weight of the realization was unbearable. I was cut off from everything I had known. Company, the people, the future I had imagined for myself, it was all gone. And with it, the part of me that had been so deeply tied to that world, to that legacy, felt like it had been ripped away as well. I tried to push the thoughts aside, force myself to move forward, but the truth was impossible to ignore. I was alone. The emptiness inside me spread like a dark cloud, suffocating every ounce of energy I had. I wasn't just without a job, I was without a place in the world I had once believed in so fully. I sat in my car, parked outside the building, staring at the tinted windows of the office. The world outside was moving, people were going about their day, but I felt frozen in time. The steady rhythm of my breath felt foreign as the tears came slow at first, then all at once, like a flood I couldn't control. I had given everything, to this family, to this business. I had sacrificed so much over the years, believing in the dream we had shared. I had given my trust, my heart, my time, and all of it was supposed to mean something. But now, in the silence of that parking lot, I realized it had all been for nothing. The betrayal cut deeper than I ever thought possible. The very person I thought I could always rely on, the one I believed would have my back no matter what, had just turned his back on me. My brother, the one I had worked beside, laughed with, fought for, had ripped away everything we had built, everything I had worked for. And in return, I was left with nothing but the emptiness of my own disbelief. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch anything that could release the crushing weight in my chest.
Oh.
My fists clenched against the steering wheel, but the anger felt too heavy to hold. I wanted to make sense of it all, to ask him why, to demand an explanation that would make the pain go away. But all I could do was sit there, motionless. Drowning in the tears that wouldn't stop coming, I cried. Not just for the business, not just for the loss of my job, but for everything I thought was unbreakable. For the trust I had given so freely, for the bond I thought we shared. All of it shattered in an instant, and I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know how to let go of the pain that was flooding my soul. So the only thing I could do was cry for what I had lost, for the brother who no longer felt like family, for the future I had imagined that was now nothing more than a broken dream. The next morning, I woke up in an empty house. The light filtered in through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room, but the stillness felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. The quiet was overwhelming, as if the world outside had stopped moving. I was used to the noise, the hustle, the feeling of purpose that came with being part of something bigger. But now, it was just me alone. I tried to shake off the feeling, to convince myself that this was just a setback, that I would figure it out. But the truth was there, heavy and undeniable. I had no idea what my next step should be. Where do you go when everything you've known for years has been ripped away? I had given so much of myself to the company, to the idea that we were building something together. I had believed in that shared vision, in the future we had crafted. But now, I was left with nothing but emptiness and uncertainty. The company was no longer mine. Neither was the future I had worked for. I tried to pretend like I was fine, like everything was just another bump in the road, but deep down, I knew that nothing would be the same again. The life I had built with my brother, the bond we had shared, had been broken. The company wasn't just about work. It was about family, about trust. And my brother had taken that from me. He had taken the company, yes, but he had also taken the last bit of trust I had in him. The person I had always looked up to, the one I had believed would stand by me no matter what, was now a stranger. It felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me, and I was left scrambling, trying to find my footing in a world that no longer made sense. As I sat there in the silence of my empty house, I realized that I was no longer the person I used to be. I wasn't just without a job, I was without a sense of purpose, without the future I had imagined. I was now someone I didn't recognize. Someone who had been shattered by the very person who should have had my back. I couldn't just let it go. The hurt, the confusion, the sense of betrayal, they were all swirling inside me, demanding an explanation. I had to face him, had to understand why he had done this. I needed something, anything that could help me make sense of the decision, of the way everything had changed between us. So, I went back to the office. The building was the same, but it felt different. The familiar hallways seemed colder now. The walls that had once echoed with laughter and camaraderie now felt like a prison. I walked past the desks, past the rooms where I had spent countless hours, and into the office that once felt like a second home. There he was, sitting behind his desk, just like he always had. But this time, it was different. His demeanor was distant, his eyes cold. I stood in front of him, trying to hold back the flood of emotion threatening to overtake me. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you do this?" "After everything we've been through, after all the years we've worked together." He looked up at me briefly, then returned his gaze to the papers in front of him, as though I wasn't even there. When he spoke, his voice was steady, impassive. "It was a business decision," he said, as if those words explained everything, eh? Chill ran through me. There was no empathy in his voice, no understanding of what this had done to me, no recognition of the years we had spent building this company together, the trust, the sacrifices, the dreams we had shared. It wasn't personal. It wasn't about family. It was just business. I felt a wave of frustration rise up in me. How could he say that so easily? How could he reduce everything we had worked for, everything we had built, to just a transaction? To him, it was just a business decision, a line item to be adjusted. But to me, it was my entire life. The words were like daggers, and yet I couldn't find the strength to say anything more. The person sitting across from me wasn't my brother anymore. He was someone else, someone unrecognizable, someone who had no understanding of the devastation he had caused. I left his office without another word, the weight of his indifference settling deep in my chest. There would be no answers. There would be no closure. It was just business. And that realization was more painful than anything he could have said. In the weeks that followed, I felt like I was in a constant battle with myself, trying to make sense of what had happened and figure out where I belonged in this new chapter of my life. But amidst the confusion and hurt, I knew that I couldn't stay stuck forever. I had to rebuild not just my career but myself. I started small. I reconnected with old friends, people I hadn't seen or spoken to in years, because the business had always come first. They had been there before the company, before the titles, before all of the responsibilities. And now, they were here again, offering me a glimpse of the life I had put on hold. It wasn't just about catching up, it was about remembering who I was without the job, without the business. They reminded me of who I had been before all of this, and in their presence, I started to find pieces of myself I had forgotten. I also started focusing on personal projects I had put aside for far too long. I'd always had dreams, things I wanted to explore, passions I'd neglected. But for years, they had taken a back seat to the business. Now, I had the time to rediscover them, whether it was painting, writing, or working on a business idea of my own. Each small step made me feel a little more like myself again. It was a slow process, and at times it felt like I was walking in circles, unsure if I was making progress. But each time I picked up a brush, a pen, or a new project, I felt a little more whole. I also began to realize that standing on my own didn't mean starting over from scratch. It meant using the strength I already had inside me, the resilience I had built over the years. I had spent so long relying on the business, on my brother, on a shared vision. Now, I had to learn how to rely on myself. It was hard. There were days when I felt lost, when the weight of everything was too much to carry, but with every challenge, with every setback, I found strength I didn't know I had. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But with each day, I felt myself growing stronger. I wasn't just surviving. I was rebuilding, step by step, piece by piece, into someone who was more than what had been taken from me. Looking back, it's hard to imagine how I could have ever thought that being fired was the worst thing that could happen to me. In the beginning, It felt like my world had collapsed, like I had lost everything. But now, I realized that it was the best thing that could have happened. It set me free in ways I never imagined possible. My brother may have taken the business, but he didn't take my integrity. He didn't take my spirit. Those were mine to keep, and no position, no betrayal could ever take them from me. At the time, I thought my worth was tied to that company, to the role I had played in, its success. But now, I see that I was wrong. I am not defined by the business I once worked for or the title I held. I am more than that. I am more than the sum of my past experiences, more than the family I was born into. I am me. Through this journey, I've learned to value myself again. I've learned that my worth doesn't come from external validation, but from the strength I've found within. I've started to build something of my own, something that reflects who I am, not just who I was. And as I step into this new chapter, I know that I'm not only free, but I'm stronger than ever. That fire inside me, the one that had once been dimmed by my connection to the business, is burning brighter than ever. I know that I'm capable of anything I set my mind to. The world is full of possibilities. I'm no longer afraid to take the leap. I will never let anyone make me feel less than what I am. I've come too far, learned too much, and grown into someone I can finally be proud of. The future is mine to shape, and I will shape it with the confidence and resilience I've discovered within myself. I am free, I am stronger, and I will continue to rise no matter what.